Hello, 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 and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. All right, you guys, I'm going to say it one last time before the sale ends. You are going to get Nelson's book, my book, Farming Without the Bank, my other book, Life Without the Bank, all for $10 off, plus the audios of both of my books. So if you do that, as soon as you hear this podcast, I do believe that the sale is going to go until the 19th, I don't know, right before Christmas. And so go and grab those books now. You probably are not going to get them by Christmas. Let's just be honest. The post office is who I send everything through. They're not that reliable. Yesterday we found out whole day's worth of stuff did not get sent out from them. So now we're on the lookout for it. But just so you know that you're probably not going to get it, but the deal is still going. So grab the bundle, get the audiobooks, best deal I've ever had. All right, enough about that. Today I want to talk to you about who gets to determine what you do with your land. And this has been a extremely controversial subject, and it's happening off of social media, on social media. Of course, people get more riled up on social media because they're behind a keyboard and nobody can see them. And then you don't know what, when people type something out, you don't know the tone in which they typed it. And I am notorious for typing stuff out, but the tone in my head does not sound how it came out because I just type real fast. And so I just say what I need to real fast, and then we're done and we're on our way. But here's the thing that I have been hearing a lot lately, or seeing a lot, that there was a post made, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. Somebody shared something that said, we can't be selling land to China. We can't be selling land for development. Some people will go as far as to say you shouldn't be breaking up native pasture and planting it because that's bad. And so if you are my neighbor, I get to tell you what you can and can't do with your ground. This is my question. And feel free to email me your answers, because I really, if I could just call people and poll them and see what their thoughts are, that would be awesome. But I'm sure everybody would hang up on me. So we don't just randomly call people. However, I would love to know what your thoughts are on this, because here's one of the big ones was, it should be illegal, or we should have government regulation so that you can't sell any land to anybody from China. Now, the question I ask is I have several questions, as usual. But if we have a regulation on this, it can't just be farm ground, right? There are housing developments. I have people in Washington and Oregon that are telling me there are housing developments that China is buying. They are coming in, they are buying them, they are then moving their people over here, and they are living in these communities. And so why is it just farm ground that we are concerned about? Is it because it's a larger scale? The gentleman that posted this said it is security reasons why there needs to be regulations. So if there are regulations and you get to tell me who I can and can't sell to, and they come in and offer me 10 times what my ground is worth, and I have to say no, are we holding people back? Are people selling 10 times because they have to? And could they not have, could we do something so they don't have to sell 10 times? That takes a lot. That's hard to say no when somebody comes in and double or triples your land value, and then you have to say no and you've struggled your whole life. That is not an easy task. Now, of course, if you listen to anything I say, then you will know that I have said for years and years and years, you can double your money just by owner financing somebody to buy it. 5% over 30 years, you doubled your money. Yes, you pay a little taxes on it, but you're going to pay tax on the 10 time. Your capital gains is going to be higher on the 10 time. But if we have a regulation, do we want more government intervention? Because if they intervene and say, hey, you know what? You can't sell anything to anybody that has to do with China. That means every single sale has to go through the appropriate government office, and they have to make sure that the purchaser is not associated with any or have any kind of affiliation with China. All sales. Because we can't just say farm ground, because they're buying real estate, homes as well. So how long does that hold up our process? We already don't have enough employees to handle what they're given. They are already pretty crappy at their jobs. And so now we want to put one more regulation on? In my opinion, how about we say, well, Mr. Farmer, if you need to take the 10 times money or you need to take 3 times money, what can we do prior to you having to sell or wanting to sell? What can we do to make farming more profitable so that you don't have to be so broke all the time that now a little bit of income comes in and we lose the fact that we are trying to save family farms, right? How is there a way to get away from that? And maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't matter if you've had millions and millions of dollars and China comes in and says, well, I'm going to pay you 10 times that. Because human nature it's super hard for us to say, no, we're not going to take that money. But we are ultimately the ones that own it right now. We do. If you own ground right now, you have the ultimate say of who you get to sell it to. You don't have to sell to China. But do we want somebody telling us what we can and can't do? As your neighbor, I may not be thrilled with your decision. I may not, and I may not have been able to compete and to even buy that land because they came in at such a high price. Is that how it works? Right? It's not any different in the housing world. I want that property. There might be a property that somebody wants and the next person comes in and gives a higher bid. It was happening in the housing market for the last 10 years. Everybody's outbidding everybody, right? Higher offers than what places are worth. And yet on the farming side of it, we say it's not okay. On the housing side, it's not okay either. Because that person that doesn't have the job that pays a bunch of money never has the opportunity to get into a nicer home. Just like the smaller farmer may not have an opportunity to get into more land. If in my eyes, what I'm seeing, talking to people on both sides of the spectrum, it's relative. North Dakota has no corporate farming, none. Yet Bill Gates bought all kinds of land here. Not Bill Gates himself, not an individual, but he figured a way around the rule of no corporate farming. Some kind of trust something or another. Had great attorneys. I do not like the man. I despise the man. He is also buying up ground. Should we be concerned about that? Should we then say, well, you know what? He's from the United States, but maybe we need to put a rule down that Bill Gates doesn't get to buy land either. And Mr. Joe next door, you don't get to sell to Bill Gates. Everybody's mad at Bill Gates for selling land, but guess who sold it? The family. So the family decided to sell it. Nobody goes to the family and says, why? Why would you sell to Bill Gates? Maybe they like the guy. That's their prerogative. I do not have to agree with it. But at what point do we actually come in and say, you can't do this with your land? No different than when I was talking about small hobby farms versus big farmers. There are a lot of people that are mid-size operations extremely mad because the small hobby farmer is coming in and buying ground for apparently more than what they can pay for it. And so that's not fair. Fair? Really? This is America. If I want to work my behind off so I can buy a small hobby farm, why shouldn't I be able to do that? I then need to talk to the neighbors and say, oh, I'm sorry. I would really like to buy that, but we'll let you have it for less. And then you get to convince the seller that you want to pay less for it. The rationale, it doesn't make sense. What makes sense is everybody just wants to complain. And, other words that I could find. That's all we want to do is complain about how it's not fair. And we spend so much time complaining about how it's not fair, we don't ask the questions of how can we still get to our answer, but with a different formula. Because I own land. Don't tell me what I can and can't do with it. Now, if the neighbors come in and say, if let's say I want to develop my land, and the neighbors come in and say, I don't want a development, they have the right to do that. They have the right to go to the planning and zoning committee and do that. And I personally have done that. Not because I don't care that there's neighbors. I care that there's so many neighbors. I care that the infrastructure wasn't there. I care that they were building on a slough and this planning and zoning didn't care about that. So now all these people are being lied to that their basement isn't going to fill with water. And in the area where I previously lived, we had massive water issues, not in my house, but we had massive water issues around. We personally lived on a little bit elevated ground. There were people around us that had been old slough ground. Well, it dried up and now it was wet in the last few years. Their houses were worth nothing. Where is the county to say, no, you shouldn't do that? So I don't care if you develop it, more power to you, but make sure the infrastructure is there. And knowing a certain builder, that wasn't happening. We're just going to slap some cheap houses up and we're just going to take advantage of people. So have I looked at that too and said, yeah, I don't like the way you're doing it because I'm the neighbor. Absolutely. Here's my take on it. Please just put fewer houses up. Develop away. But when we're talking about, so can neighbors have an effect on it? 100%. But when we are talking about putting regulations on, that you don't even get an option, absolutely not. We just crawled into bed with one more leg with the government. Don't you think we already have enough government control? And what I was told, this isn't about freedom, it's about security. So we take away our freedom to have security, how much of that do we have to give up to have the security? Versus saying, you know, what can we do so that you don't have to sell to China to still have the money? Is there another option? No different than North Dakota. No corporate farming, but we're going to figure a way around that because I'm Bill Gates and I have great attorneys. That's what good attorneys are for, is to figure a way around it. And so if we put a regulation in, don't you think that they're just going to figure a way around it? Don't you think that it's going to be a percentage? Oh, China can't buy this, but you know, if there is an American that owns 5% of that company, it's not a 100% China-based company, then we can sell it to you. And they're going to go find their 5% American owned. They're going to find a way around it. How are you going to stop a private sale? How are you going to stop a deed transfer? How are you going to stop all those things? All regulation is a rule that we got to figure out how to get around. No different than infinite banking. Why do we have a modified endowment contract? Because the government came in the 80s and said, hey, you millionaires, you're putting all of this money into whole life. It's all growing income tax free. So we are going to create the MEC, the modified endowment contract. And now you can't put as much money in. It has to grow a little bit slower. You can't overfund this thing. Because if you do, we're going to start charging you tax on the growth. So why did Nelson have 49 policies? To avoid the MEC. Why do you have to have a system of more policies? To avoid the MEC. I have a colleague that he's been selling insurance for years and years and years. And he had accounts where farmers would put $100,000 into life insurance and it would all grow income tax free and they would use it and they'd do all their stuff with it. And guess what? The government came in and changed it. Now we have to skirt by their rules, which means we start more than one policy. Do you think that's not going to happen? At the end of the day, what gives? Here's how I'm going to close this out, because I could go on forever about this because it's clearly a soapbox for me. What gives you the right to tell me what to do with my land? That's what it comes down to. What gives you the right to tell me who I can sell my house to? Do we want all that regulation? I don't know. I say it's a slippery slope, but it is super frustrating. Super frustrating when you want to do something and somebody says, no, you can't do that. And I get it. I get it to an extent. I'm not saying it's like the worst idea ever and we shouldn't be doing it. What I'm saying is we need to think about it. Instead of complaining that it's happening, look at the full picture. It is not just China coming over. It is China coming over and that guy has to say, I'm selling. And if he sells, should we really have the right to say, no, you can't do that? Right? I mean, sadly, money talks. But it is absolutely crazy to me how many people in this industry think that they should tell you what to do with your ground. Oh, you can't buy it as an investor. You can't buy it for hunting. That's not right. It's taking it out of production. Is it taking it out of production? Are we putting it into CRP? Are we letting somebody farm it? What are the actual numbers? Again, if I want to put it into CRP, the program is there. Do I take advantage of the program? I personally wouldn't. But the program is there. People are taking advantage of the program. Do we get rid of the program if it's bad? My tax dollars wouldn't have to be paid into it then, right? Is it our right to tell somebody who they can and can't sell to? I don't know. I say no. I say no. I think there is a lot of people that need to just think the full picture through. And it is not just farmers that are the victims of what's being bought. And if we have a victim mentality, that's never going to create solutions. And in this industry, we need solutions. If you want land that's next to you, how do we get that land? Does that mean that we have to have 2 off-the-farm jobs until we can buy the land that we need? Until we can farm the acreage that we want? Until we can have the number of cows that we want? Is having an off-the-farm job awful? No. That is a whole nother soapbox, and I am not getting on it right now. Because having people that have homes in town, both of them have to work to maintain their lifestyle. If we want a different lifestyle than we had 40 years ago, we're most likely going to have 2 off-the-farm incomes. There are a lot of business owners that have a spouse that's working while they run their business. There's a lot of business owners that are working a job and working their business at the same time. Again, for farmers, if we want a different lifestyle, do we have to go there? Do we need to tell people what they can and can't do with their ground because we want to farm full time? We want that opportunity, so I'm going to tell you what you can and can't do with your ground. You can't sell it for a higher price. You can't sell it to a hobby farmer. You can't sell it to somebody else that has the same dream. No, 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 because that is my dream and my dream only. So only I should have the opportunity to buy it at the price I want to buy it. Do you see how that sounds a little bit ridiculous? Because when it comes time for you to sell, are you going to sell to China? Are you going to sell to the hobby farmer and the highest bidder coming in? Or are you going to say, no, 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 my neighbor over here, he's always wanted to farm and start. And so we are going to just take a hit on this land value and we're going to sell it over there. We can be regulated to death. Is that really what we want? I don't know. Not me. Okay, guys, I'm going to quit beating this horse. Let me know if you need anything, comments, concerns, what your thoughts are. Email me, maryjo@withoutthebank.com. Yes, I do read them. Email me. Let me know if you need anything. Otherwise, I will catch you in the next podcast.